time I wrote a book about Fox, it was mostly anonymously sourced. And you all know that's how it has to be sometimes. Some sources insist on confidentiality, they won't go on the record. But then 3 years later, when Dominion was suing Fox News and Dominion was able to obtain all of those emails and text messages from inside Fox, I felt like all of my anonymous sources were now speaking on the record. Of course, it wasn't their choice. They were forced onto the record through the legal process, through the document discovery process. But there were so many revealing messages, including emails with Rupert Murdoch, that I thought, hey, someone's got to turn this into a book.
So what's your take on where Fox News goes now? I mean, post Tucker Carlson, ahead of a new election season, they've got a new CEO. There's so many changes that have happened in the last, year, 6 months to a year. What happens to Fox?
That's right. We talked after Tucker Carlson was ousted on the air. Then Rupert Murdoch deciding to step aside. It actually takes effect this week. Yesterday at News Corp, tomorrow at Fox Corp, he becomes chairman emeritus. And he's really elevating his son Lachlan, making it even more clear that Lachlan is the future of these companies. What's the future of Fox? Well, in the book, I quoted an insider saying Lachlan just wants to minimize headaches and maximize profits. I think that's what we see in the Tucker Carlson firing. He wants to minimize those headaches, and then he wants to try to figure out how to make as much as he can out of these declining cable businesses while also investing in Tubi and in Fox Nation and other streaming ventures. Of course, Fox is one of these subscale media players. It's not nothing like Netflix or Disney. So I think, in the future, anything could happen. I think the most likely scenario is we're going to see another attempt to recombine News Corp and Fox Corp, but maybe not for another year or so.
So, Brian, what's in some of this? What are some of the new issues that you kind of unfounded or founded here in this new book?
Yeah. What I get at is Rupert and Lachlan Murdoch's role within this company and this network, Fox News, that is the dominant player within the Republican Party. And what I found is that the times when Rupert and Lachlan should have stepped in and been more involved, they weren't. They were laid back. They were kind of letting others do the dirty work. Remember in Succession when Lucas Matson says he's hiring a pain sponge? Well, I came to realize that's what the Murdochs really do in real life. No wonder the show was so heavily reliant on the Murdoch story. They have their own pain sponges, to clean up the messes. And so that I found was interesting when reading these emails and text messages, that they keep their, they have plausible deniability sometimes with some of these scandals and lawsuits. And of course, these lawsuits are ongoing. We know Dominion settled, but Smartmatic, another voting company, is suing Fox. There are a lot of shareholder lawsuits and other defamation lawsuits. It's really remarkable that here we are talking at the end of 2023, and there's still so much litigation about the last presidential election.
What do you think about, we've recently heard that Donald Trump was dead set against leaving the White House. And, more and more is coming to light, but it continues to shock me that he has such a strong hold on, a place like Fox or the U.S. Congress. How does he continue to have that kind of strength?
I think it has a lot to do with the rewriting of January 6th. And I discovered this as I read through all these emails and texts, that after January 6th, Rupert Murdoch said very clearly, we're going to make Trump a non-person. We are pivoting away from Trump. He was told by his number two that Sean Hannity is ready to lead the 75 million Trump voters away from Trump. So clearly there was an attempt to make Trump a non-person. But it didn't last. So why didn't it last? Why was Trump able to get back to center stage? Why was he replatformed? Well, I argue it's because people like Tucker Carlson rewrote the story of January 6th to say it wasn't an insurrection, it wasn't a riot, it was just a tourist visit gone bad, that it actually wasn't that big a deal, that, hey, maybe the feds were involved, maybe the government plants were in the crowd ginning up the protesters. Basically, by presenting a conspiracy theory version of January 6th, I think it helped to absolve Trump in the minds of his fans, to absolve Trump in the minds of Fox's viewers, and thus, now here we are, Trump's still the dominant figure in the primary.
Brian, what role do you expect Fox News to play in this upcoming presidential election vis-a-vis the former President Trump, who presumably is the Republican nominee?
Well, look, the first two GOP debates of the season both went to Fox. Now there's going to be a few more debates, but without Trump, they're becoming less and less important. Trump is in a little bit of a standoff with Fox. He thinks he's more powerful than Fox. They go back and forth because, they're like It's like, I don't know if it's a buddy comedy or it's a horror movie, but it's a situation where they're kind of both battling each other at all times. But at the end of the day, what matters most is that the audience comes home and Trump comes home. He will come home to Fox because they have the same interest. They want to see Democrats defeated. So even though there's lots of talk about Trump trashing Rupert Murdoch, complaining about Fox, I don't think that'll matter in a general election. I think what'll matter is that Fox still has a stranglehold on a giant piece of the right in the United States.
Does CNN want a piece of that? I mean, they did a town hall with Donald Trump. They've made some moves that media critics have questioned, as you know. What's CNN doing?
I think right now CNN is trying to report the truth as loudly and clearly as possible. And I think they've been excelling with coverage of the war between Israel and Hamas. I think there was, an effort last year, and I think an understandable effort by David Zaslav and others to try to figure out how to appeal to everybody, appeal to conservatives as well as liberals and moderates. But I think we have to make a distinction between conservatives and MAGA loyalists, okay? It's the same distinction Biden makes in his speeches between Republicans, who he's known for decades, versus MAGA Republicans who seem to want to burn it all down. You're not going to be able, in my view, to get through to Trump loyalists who have been told for almost a decade now that the real news is fake. So if that's the strategy at CNN, that wasn't going to work. But I don't think that was the strategy. I think the strategy was, and maybe to some extent still is, to try to show that it's real news coverage, not the fake news that Trump lied about. And, that's the problem for a lot of these brands, a lot of these media brands. They're up against a disinformation campaign. So I have a lot of sympathy for the CNNs and the NBCs of the world that are trying to get the word out that they're actually just doing their jobs, reporting what's in the world, but they're up against this hurricane of noise and lies from Donald Trump.
Brian, what's happened to Tucker Carlson? Do we know kind of how that has turned out yet? Because for a while it seemed like there were a lot of MAGA Republicans that were going to switch away from Fox and go to, I don't know what he's doing, but has he still got a big following?
He doesn't quite know what he's doing yet either, but he's making a lot of videos on the site formerly known as Twitter, and he's reportedly raising money and making ad deals so he can grow that into a real media company. I think he has big ambitions because he wants revenge against Fox. He wants to show Fox who's boss. But right now, his platform has diminished. He's not making as much of an impact. He's not as influential. Yes, he still has a fan base, but it goes to show once again that the machine is bigger than the parts. The parts are replaceable. Fox News is the platform that matters, not the individual hosts. And gosh, for whether you love it or hate it, that's a credit to Rupert Murdoch for making that investment almost 30 years ago.